Hi, the internet. My name is Ben. I spent the last 16 years as an employee of the Catholic Church, including the last three as an assistant principal of a Catholic school. And Donald Trump made me an atheist. This is part 5 of the forensic reconstruction of my faith after its grisly murder over the course of 3 years. Last time, I discussed how I saw the early church's success as an indicator that it received divine intervention in its growth, that the hand of God was ordaining its undertaking. I also argued that inconsistencies in the gospel narratives were something I was able to easily reconcile. What I left hanging in the wind like the aroma of so many pies from cartoons in 1954 was that neither of those things were positive indications of the central claims. The success of the early church is an argument from statistics. Perhaps it's unlikely that some backwater persecuted cult would rise to a position of prominence, but unlikely things, happen. Also, being able to explain away two discrepant details from gospel accounts does nothing to speak to the veracity of the central claims that are agreed upon. When I was in college in 2007, me, time is a son of a bitch. When I was in college in 2014, that makes me look worse. That makes me look like I aged terribly. When I was in college in 1998, I recognized that those two arguments didn't provide proof of the central claims of Christianity. So I wanted to start digging into that a little bit more, and it also caused me to ask this really important question. If God wanted to manifest in reality by taking the form of a human and knowing that that person would go on to teach incredible, profound truths, and knowing that humanity's response to that would be to torture and kill that person, and knowing that humanity's salvation was dependent on knowing about and accepting that that person was tortured to death and rose from the dead, wouldn't it have been better for God to wait until such time as technology had advanced that those claims could be investigated and verified? Wouldn't that be like way smarter? Like there would have been a sweet spot when surveillance footage would have been almost ubiquitous, but the technology to like do deep fakes hadn't really developed yet. That time existed. It's past, but it did exist at one point. DNA evidence. We could have done a forensic investigation of the cross and the tomb and any garments that would have been there to determine for sure where this person was. And then we could also do a similar DNA test on someone claiming to be that person risen from the dead, right? Because the resurrection narrative could be explained by something as weird as, well, Jesus had a twin. Let's grant for the sake of argument that there was a traveling rabbi in first century Palestine by the name of Jesus whose teachings are largely preserved today and who was tortured and killed by crucifixion. Let's grant all that for the sake of argument. Is it really ridiculous to wonder if that guy maybe had a twin who never got out of the house much? Like, is that absurd? Is that supernatural? Is it beyond the realm of possibility? And the answer is no. And what if Jesus' twin, Frank, so Frank is sitting at home and hears news of Jesus' death and goes, "Ah, Jesus Christ, you died," and says to himself, well, let me go into town and check out what happened. Right, and so Frank is walking around Jerusalem and people keep mistaking him for Jesus, and suddenly we've got ourselves resurrection appearances. Do I think that's terribly likely? No, I think there's better explanations. But like, you can't rule out that possibility. If you're going to rule in resurrection, you've got to rule in long lost twin. We know people have long lost twins. We don't know people rise from the dead. We know people have twins. We do. And again, it's first century Palestine. They don't have photographs to compare it to. What if it's just someone who looks a lot like him? What if our friend Frank here isn't his twin, is just a guy who happens to be in Jerusalem for the weekend and arrives and people start proclaiming him the Messiah? He goes, holy shit, we are keeping this rolling. And Frank is like, oh yeah, that's me. I'm Jesus. I'm the Messiah for sure. I rose from the dead. Yep, I remember tortured. Oh, it was horrible. Oh, it was the worst. I'm better now. I feel way better. Yep, rose from the dead. Totally closed over. Totally fixed. It's better. Rose from the dead. I did. Think about what you would need right now to believe someone died and rose from the dead. What would you need right now to believe that happened? Like someone right now is saying, I rose from the dead. You would need to have like a blood sample, some DNA sample of them now, compare it to video to some, then I don't even know. You'd have to, how would you even compare that? Then you would need, I guess, footage of someone having their blood drawn by a scientist, and then that gets analyzed on camera without ever leaving the shot of the guy who was going to get killed in the first place, right? That's the only way you could know it. And even then, I don't know that I'd accept it. I don't know that I'd accept that, even that evidence. How would you possibly verify someone died and rose from the dead? That is a nearly impossible task today, right now, in the year 2021. It was impossible in the year 33 AD. The Doubting Thomas story is so instructive, isn't it? I mean, it's such a great scam that the Bible runs on that one. If you know anything about the Gospels, the first three Gospels are the Synoptic Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and there are precisely zero stories of anyone trying to do any type of analytical thinking about whether the guy who they seem to believe is Jesus is in fact Jesus. Nobody does anything. And there's one story in Luke where Jesus sort of shapeshifts after dinner. He's like walking along with his gang of fellas, and they're talking about Jesus, and Jesus is there the whole time, but like in the form of some other guy. And then they have dinner together and they break bread, and Jesus says the prayer. And in that moment, as Jesus is saying the prayer over the bread and wine, they recognize it was him all along. It was like some Scooby-Doo guy takes off his mask. Oh, it's been Jesus the whole time. And then they report back to the rest of the gang, and the rest of the gang just like is so credulous about it. They just believe the whole thing. No one, finally someone goes, Thomas finally goes, guys, were you sure it was Jesus? Like, are you sure it was Jesus? Are you sure it was Jesus? I don't know that it was Jesus. And they're like, oh, yeah, for sure. And Thomas goes, well, are you sure? Because we saw him get tortured to death. Did you, like, his arms should have been covered in blood. And they're like, yeah, for sure, definitely. And he says, like, were there holes in him? Like, were there holes in his body? We saw them put holes in his body. Are you sure it wasn't just like stage makeup? And they go, yeah. Yes, Thomas. Holes. So then Jesus appears to Thomas and takes Thomas's hand and like shoves it into his side and puts it into his hands and everything. And Thomas goes, oh, dang, oh, wow, thanks, Jesus. Thanks for showing me. I really thought these guys were pulling my leg, or so to speak. And then Jesus is such a jerk about it. Right, Jesus is acting like some emotionally manipulative Regina George here. It's fine, no, it's fine, it's whatever, Thomas. I really think you're taking this the wrong way. It's fine, I don't care. I'm sorry, I wasn't sure, and I just wanted to make sure. I mean, that's all. It's whatever, Thomas, it's whatever. Jesus, I think you're being a little unfair. This is unfair at this point. I mean, it's crazy because so many of my other friends just sort of like believed me when they heard about it, and you didn't, and that's fine, Thomas. But the other guys, they're a little gullible sometimes, you know? I mean, these are the same guys whose grandfathers got involved in that pyramid scheme in Egypt where they built the pyramids. I know you wanted to see me for real, and that was like really important to you, and it's fine, it's totally fine. It's just, my best friends didn't need that. Oh, I'm not a best friend now. It's fine. We're good friends still. We're still very good friends, Thomas. Okay, I guess I'm not a best friend. I guess I'm not in the best friends club. Is Judas still in the best friends club? Is Judas still a best friend? What Judas did was worse, right? I mean, come on. We're still pretty good friends. Dude, you were dead. I thought it was fair to check and make sure that it's all fine. That I think we know for sure. It's fine. I will write a gospel. I will write a gospel about it now that I've seen it. You're going to write your own little gospel, and it's going to be, factually incorrect. We'll see if your gospel makes it into the Bible. It's fine. I'm writing the gospel anyway. I'm going to write what I want to write. I'm not sure this scene makes it in. At least it doesn't look good for you. I'll tell you that much. It's fine. You can write your gospel if you want, but it's not going to be in the Bible because we're not quite vibing, and it's fine. Jesus Christ. I just wanted to know. Fine. Okay, we need to stop this. You talk to the rest of my hand. I don't want to talk about it anymore. If I just right now magically developed the ability to lift cars over my head and just spin them about, if that happened in this moment and I went out and did it and went, oh shit, this is great. And then I went and told my kids and said, kids, I can lift cars up over my head and spin them about on my hand. And they just believed me without making me show them, I would have failed as a parent. That would be a failure. That they didn't do some type of investigation into what is an outlandish claim. But Thomas is chided for it. All right, and of course, the story's there not to chide doubters, a little bit to chide doubters. Mostly, though, it's to build up the church community of today and say, you should feel great about yourselves because you believe and haven't seen. That's what Jesus closes the whole ordeal with, right? Blessed are you who have believed without seeing. Well, that's mean. I mean, that's so manipulative and mean. People shouldn't believe claims without any type of evidence. And when you make an outlandish claim and they ask for evidence, they aren't being cynical. That's a proper epistemic process. And it's wrong of Jesus to say otherwise. It's one of the worst things in the gospel. It's such a manipulative line. I don't like it. Right, my point is, though, that I knew all this. I came to all these conclusions when I was in college, in 1998. And I came to all these conclusions. Now, I don't know that I put that much thought into it. Otherwise, I would have deconverted earlier. But I did definitely reconcile the fact that knowing that the resurrection happened is not something I could say. I couldn't say that I knew the resurrection happened. I think even then, I would say that I recognized that holding the belief that Jesus rose from the dead wasn't an evidence-based position. You couldn't even say the preponderance of evidence was in favor of Jesus rising from the dead. But when you take the collective case of what I understood about the world, I knew that God kickstarted the universe. I knew that the early church persisted against long odds. I knew that I felt God in Mass and in communion and in other sacraments. And I knew that God was providing me supernatural aid throughout my high school and college years. I knew all that. And so I reconciled all of that by deciding that a leap to faith, as Kierkegaard puts it, was something that is not only necessary in order to become a Christian, but that is actually virtuous, that it is a good thing to believe something on faith, to believe something without complete and total evidence, or even to accept something with evidence that you can recognize to be insufficient. God didn't take the form of Jesus and died and resurrected in a time where we could verify that it happened because believing on faith was important. I wanted to accept the resurrection. I wanted to accept that the resurrection happened, not because the evidence stood on its own merit, because I recognized that it didn't. I wanted to accept it because it helped fill out the other beliefs that I already had. It helped justify an understanding of the world that was already in place. Let's dabble into QAnon for a moment. Those are some fun waters. So let's suppose that you are a person who is generally conservative and you have become convinced that Democratic politicians are trying to institute laws and policies that you genuinely believe will be to America's detriment, whether that's healthcare for all, or an increase in the minimum wage, or the institution of a UBI, or an investment in renewable energy. All of those things coupled with laws preserving a woman's right to an abortion.
Because we don't like the murder of unborn children.
You would see those policies as objectively bad for the country, and then in one case, a plainly unethical and mistreatment of a class of human beings. And you'd wonder, how could someone be so screwed up that they could advocate for such unadulterated evil? And then you'd scroll around an internet message board on 8chan, and you'd see this possibility that, well, wait, maybe these are lizard people in disguise. Or maybe it's a cabal of pedophiles. And you'd think, well, that might be lacking in evidence, but it sure would explain a lot, wouldn't it? That would be a bad logical jump, but it's one that people make all the time. It's especially easy if your religion has primed you to do it, though. Of course, this all ignores the white supremacy that's baked into the QAnon moment. It's there, that's real, and I don't mean to discount it. I'm actually going to talk a lot about QAnon in a follow-up series called How an ACL Injury Made Me Realize That Black Lives Matter. For me, I made a second jump to faith besides just accepting the resurrection. And that was this. If the Bible was best viewed as humanity's first theology project, right, the first attempt at imaging the divine, then surely that God wouldn't leave us alone to our own devices to continue that project. God wouldn't just abandon us with such an imperfect book. He would provide us with some body that would help us continue to investigate the nature of the divine and what it meant to be an ethical and moral human in today's world. There would be something continuing the process. And that's next time on How Donald Trump Made Me an Atheist. We're going to talk about Catholicism specifically. Listen, before you go anywhere else, just like and subscribe. That'd be really nice. I'd appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you to my patrons, Brendan, Rosemary, and Sasha. You guys are amazing. If you would like to be a patron, patreon.com/BigBennyBuckets. I will see you next time.